The sky turned gold on the morning. Everything changed. Tay stood at the window of the military command center in Seoul. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had served in the army for 25 years. He had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing like this. The ships came down through the clouds like falling stars. They were massive. Each one was bigger than a football stadium. Their surfaces were smooth and shining, made of some metal that glowed with soft golden light. There were hundreds of them. They filled the sky from horizon to horizon. Tay watched in silence. Around him, young soldiers ran back and forth. Phones rang without stopping. Computer screens showed images from all over the world. The ships were everywhere. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Every major city had golden ships floating above it. Commander Tay, a young officer said. His name was Day. He was only 23 years old, and his hands were shaking. What do we do? Tay did not answer right away. He was thinking. His mind was working through all the training he had received. But no training had prepared him for this. No training had prepared anyone for this. The radio crackled. A voice came through. It was not human. It was too smooth, too perfect. It spoke in Korean, but also in every other language at the same time. Somehow, everyone could understand it. People of Earth, the voice said, we are the Valori. We have traveled across the stars for 10,000 years. We have ruled 1,000 worlds. We have lifted primitive species from darkness into light. Today, we come to you. Tay felt cold. He knew what was coming next. We are your gods now, the voice continued. You will worship us. You will serve us. You will give us your loyalty and your labor. In return, we will give you peace. We will give you order. We will give you purpose. This is not a request. This is the truth of your new existence. Kneel, and you will live. Resist, and you will die. The broadcast ended. For a moment, there was only silence in the command center. Then chaos erupted. Soldiers shouted. Officers argued. Some cried. Some prayed. They looked at Tay with wide eyes. They want us to surrender? Just like that? Without a fight? That is what they want, Tay said quietly. What do we do? They asked again. Tay turned away from the window. His face was calm. His eyes were hard. We do not kneel. But the world did not agree with Tay. Within hours, governments began to fall. The Valori demonstrated their power without mercy. They destroyed military bases with beams of light that fell from their ships. In Paris, they melted the Eiffel Tower in seconds. In Washington, they turned the White House into ash. In Beijing, they made an entire army division disappear without a trace. The message was clear. Resistance was death. World leaders surrendered one by one. The President of the United States gave a speech with tears in his eyes, telling his people to accept the new rulers. The European Union dissolved itself and pledged loyalty to the Valori. China's government told its citizens that cooperation was the only path forward. Tay watched all of this from a bunker underground. He had retreated there with a small group of soldiers who refused to surrender. Day was with him. So were a few others. Maybe 50 people in total. They were nothing compared to the alien fleet above. It is over, one of the soldiers said. His name was Jun. He was older than Day but younger than Tay. He sat in a corner with his head in his hands. We cannot fight them. Did you see what they did? They have technology we cannot even understand. We are like ants to them. Ants can bite, Tay said. Jun looked up. What? Ants can bite, Tay repeated. They are small. They are weak. But they do not give up. They fight until the end. And sometimes they bring down creatures much larger than themselves. Jun shook his head. This is not the same. They are gods. They said so themselves. Tay walked over to Jun and crouched down in front of him. He put a hand on the younger man's shoulder. They call themselves gods. But gods do not bleed. Gods do not need ships. Gods do not need weapons. These creatures have all of those things. They are not gods. They are just beings with better technology. And technology can be beaten. Jun did not look convinced. But he did not argue. Days passed. The Valori began their occupation. They landed troops on the ground. The soldiers were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They wore golden armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. On their heads, they wore crowns made of silver metal. The crowns seemed to connect them somehow. They moved in perfect formation, like they shared one mind. The Valori built temples in every major city. They demanded that humans come and bow before statues of their emperor. Those who refused were taken away. No one knew what happened to them. They simply disappeared. Tay watched from the shadows. He had moved his small group to an abandoned factory outside of Seoul. They had food and water for a few weeks. They had weapons. They had a radio that let them listen to broadcasts. The broadcasts were terrifying. The Valori were efficient. They divided humanity into classes: workers, servants, soldiers. The best and brightest were taken to serve in Valori households. Children were separated from parents. Families were broken apart. And everywhere, the message was the same. The Valori were gods. Humans were nothing. Resistance was impossible. But Tay did not believe it. One night, a woman came to the factory. She was alone, covered in dirt and blood. Her name was Hana. She had been an engineer before the invasion. She had worked at a technology company, designing computer chips. When the Valori came, she had fled. I heard there was a group here, she said, breathing hard. A group that has not surrendered. Tay looked at her carefully. Who told you this? People talk, Hana said. In the work camps, people whisper. They say there is a commander who refuses to bow. They say he is gathering people. Is it true? Tay was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. It is true. Hana's eyes filled with tears. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. I want to join you. I want to fight. We are a small group, Tay said. We have almost nothing. The Valori have everything. Why would you risk your life? Hana wiped her eyes. Because I watched them take my brother. He was only 15. He did nothing wrong. He just looked at one of them in the wrong way. They dragged him away and I never saw him again. Her voice grew hard. I do not care if I die. I will not live on my knees. Tay studied her face. He saw anger there, and determination, and something else. Hope? Welcome to the resistance, he said. Hana became their greatest weapon. She was brilliant. Smarter than anyone Tay had ever met. She took apart one of the captured Valori weapons and figured out how it worked. She studied their technology for hours, days, weeks. She barely slept. She barely ate. She just worked, and slowly she began to understand. Their crowns, she said one night, gathering everyone around her. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her voice was excited. The silver crowns they wear. That is the key. What do you mean? They asked. Hana drew a diagram on a piece of paper. The crowns connect them to a network, like a hive mind. It lets them communicate instantly. It coordinates their movements. It makes them faster and smarter than they would be alone. Without the crowns, they are just individuals. Strong? Yes. Advanced? Yes. But not unbeatable. How do we take away the crowns? John asked. We do not take them away, Hana said. We disrupt them. The crowns work on a specific frequency. If we can create a strong enough electromagnetic pulse at that frequency, we can shut down the crowns. Even just for a few seconds. Tay leaned forward. And what happens when the crowns shut down? Hannah smiled. It was a dangerous smile. Chaos. Confusion. They will not be able to think clearly. They will not be able to coordinate. For those few seconds, they will be vulnerable. A few seconds is not much, Jun said. A few seconds is enough, Tay replied. In a few seconds, a bullet can travel from a gun to a target. In a few seconds, an explosion can bring down a building. In a few seconds, the course of history can change. The room was silent. Then Tay spoke. Can you build this device? This electromagnetic pulse? Hannah nodded slowly. I think so. But I will need materials. Parts from their technology. And time. Lots of time. Then we will get you what you need, Tay said. And we will give you time. He stood up and looked around at his small group. 50 people against an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds. The odds were impossible. The chances of success were almost zero. But Tay did not care about odds. They call themselves gods, he said. They believe they cannot be defeated. They believe we are nothing but insects to be crushed. But they have made a mistake. They have forgotten something important. What? Tay asked. Tay's eyes were burning with determination. They have forgotten that humans do not give up. We have fought wars for thousands of years. We have survived plagues and disasters and famines. We have killed our own gods and built new ones. We have crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. And we will not stop now. He raised his fist. They want us to bow. They want us to worship them. They want us to accept that we are nothing. But we are not nothing. We are humanity. And humanity does not kneel. Around him, his soldiers raised their fists too. 50 voices shouted together in the darkness of that abandoned factory. The Valori heard nothing. They sat in their golden ships and their new temples, accepting worship from billions of conquered humans. They believed their victory was complete. They were wrong dot in the shadows of a broken W. 2 months was not a lot of time. But Hannah worked like she was racing against death itself. The abandoned factory became her laboratory. She took over an entire section of the building and filled it with stolen equipment. Wires hung from the ceiling like spider webs. Circuit boards covered every table. Tools were scattered across the floor. It was chaos to everyone else. But to Hannah, it was order. She knew where everything was. She knew exactly what she was building. Tay watched her work sometimes. He did not understand most of what she did, but he understood determination. And Hannah had more determination than anyone he had ever met. You need to sleep, he told her one night. It was 3 in the morning. Hannah was hunched over a workbench, connecting tiny wires with hands that should have been shaking from exhaustion, but somehow remained steady. I will sleep. When this is done, she said without looking up. You will collapse before it is done if you keep going like this. Hannah finally stopped. She turned to face him. Her eyes were red and tired, but there was fire in them. Every day I waste, more people die. More families are broken. More children are taken. I cannot sleep knowing that I might be able to stop it. Tay had no answer to that. He simply nodded and walked away. While Hannah worked on the device, the others worked on gathering supplies. This was dangerous work. The Valori controlled everything now. Food, water, technology. Taking anything without permission was a crime punished by death. But the resistance had learned to be invisible. Tay became their best scout. He was young enough to move through crowds without being noticed. He learned the patrol patterns of Valori soldiers. He found gaps in their security. He discovered that the aliens, for all their power, had weaknesses. They were arrogant. They did not expect humans to fight back, so they did not look very hard for threats. One night, they came back from a mission with a prize. It was a Valori neural crown, one of the silver metal devices the aliens wore on their heads. "How did you get this?" Tay asked, staring at the object with amazement. They grinned. It was the first time anyone had seen him smile in weeks. One of their soldiers got drunk. Yes, they drink too. I found him passed out in an alley near their temple. I took the crown and ran. Hana grabbed the crown from Day's hands with excitement. "This is perfect. This is exactly what I needed." She rushed back to her workbench and began examining the device. For hours, she took it apart piece by piece. She studied every component. She measured every frequency. She ran tests again and again. And then, in the early hours of the morning, she screamed. Everyone came running. They thought something was wrong. They thought she was hurt. But when they found her, she was laughing. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was laughing. "I found it," she said. "I found the frequency. I know exactly how to shut them down." The room erupted in cheers, but the celebration did not last long. There was still much work to do. Hannah needed more materials, specific parts that could only be found in Valori technology. This meant raiding their outposts, stealing from under their noses, risking death every single time. Jung led the first raid. He had changed since the beginning. The man who once sat with his head in his hands, saying it was hopeless, was gone. In his place was a soldier, a fighter. His doubt had turned to anger, and his anger had turned to purpose. The target was a small Valori supply depot on the outskirts of the city. It was guarded by only 4 soldiers. In normal circumstances, 4 Valori soldiers were enough to kill 100 humans. Their weapons were too fast, too powerful, too accurate. But June did not plan to fight them directly. He waited until night. The Valori had excellent vision, but they relied heavily on their crowns to detect threats. June had learned that the crowns could not sense humans who stayed very still. The technology detected movement and heat patterns. If you controlled both, you could become invisible. June spent 3 hours lying in a ditch, barely breathing. He watched the soldiers patrol. He memorized their routes. He counted the seconds between their turns, and then he moved. He was fast. Not as fast as the Valori, but fast enough. He slipped through a gap in the fence. He rolled under a transport vehicle. He crept along the shadows of the building until he reached a ventilation shaft. Inside the depot, he found what Hana needed: power cells, amplification circuits, frequency modulators. He did not understand what any of it did, but he had memorized Hana's list, and he grabbed everything on it. Getting out was harder than getting in. One of the soldiers had changed his patrol route. Jun found himself face to face with an alien, just as he was climbing out of a window. For a moment, they both froze. The Valori was tall, almost 7 feet. His blue skin seemed to glow in the moonlight. His golden eyes widened with surprise. Jun did not hesitate. He swung the bag of stolen equipment at the soldier's head. The impact knocked the crown loose. The Valori stumbled, suddenly confused and disoriented without his connection to the network. Jun ran behind him. Alarms began to sound. But he was already gone, disappearing into the night like a ghost. When he returned to the factory, he was breathing hard and covered in sweat. But he was smiling. "Got everything," he said, dropping the bag at Hana's feet. She hugged him. It was sudden and surprising and made Jun turn red with embarrassment. But no one laughed. They understood. This was hope. Real, tangible hope. The resistance grew. Word spread quietly through the underground networks that humans had built. A whisper here, a coded message there. People who had been living in despair began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. New recruits came to the factory. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Tay organized them into cells, small groups that operated independently. If one cell was captured, the others would survive. It was a strategy as old as human warfare. But it worked. Each cell had a purpose. Some gathered intelligence. Some stole supplies. Some spread propaganda, reminding people that they were not alone. Some trained for combat, learning to fight in ways the Valori did not expect. And at the center of it all was Hana, building the weapon that would change everything. She called it the Pulse. It was not a big machine. In fact, it fit in a backpack. But its effect would be enormous. When activated, it would send out an electromagnetic wave that would disrupt every Valori crown within a 2-kilometer radius. For exactly 17 seconds, every Valori soldier in range would lose their connection to the network. They would be confused, vulnerable, human. 17 seconds does not seem like much, a new recruit said when Hana explained the device. Her name was Sue. She was only 19 years old, but she had already lost her entire family to the Valori. 17 seconds is enough to change the world, Hana replied. In 17 seconds, a bomb can explode. In 17 seconds, a leader can fall. In 17 seconds, hope can replace fear. Sue looked at the device with new understanding. When do we use it? Hana looked at Tay. He stepped forward. We have been planning for weeks, he said. The Valori have a command outpost in the center of Seoul. It is where their regional commander operates. If we can take that outpost, we can show the world that they are not unbeatable. We can inspire others to rise up. And if we fail? Sue asked. Tay's expression did not change. Then we die fighting, which is better than living on our knees. There were no more questions. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. The resistance planned every detail of the attack. They studied maps of the outpost. They counted soldiers. They identified weak points. They practiced their roles again and again until every person knew exactly what to do. Day led the scouts. He had become a master of moving unseen. He slipped into the city night after night, gathering information that others thought was impossible to obtain. He learned the name of the regional commander. He learned the schedule of guard rotations. He learned where the commander slept and what he ate, and when he was most vulnerable. Jun trained the fighters. He taught them how to move quietly, how to use their human advantages, like superior endurance and creativity, how to strike fast and disappear before the enemy could respond. And Hana finished the pulse. The night before the attack, Tay gathered everyone in the main hall of the factory. There were nearly 300 people now, men and women and some who were barely more than children. They came from every part of Korea. Some had been soldiers. Some had been teachers. Some had been farmers or doctors or artists. Now, they were all the same. They were all resistance. Tomorrow, we make history, Tay said. His voice was calm but powerful. It filled the room. Tomorrow, we show the Valori that they made a mistake. They thought they could crush us. They thought we would break. They were wrong. He paused, looking at the faces around him. Some of us will not come back. I will not lie to you about that. This is war, and in war, people die. But our deaths will mean something. They will light a fire that cannot be put out. They will show every human on this planet that resistance is possible. He raised his fist. The Valori call themselves gods. Tomorrow, we teach them that they are not. Tomorrow, we show them what humans can do. Tomorrow, we fight. The room erupted in cheers and shouts. Fists rose into the air. Voices joined together in a roar of defiance. Hana stood at the back of the crowd, holding the pulse in her hands. It was small and light, but it carried the weight of all their hopes. She thought about her brother, the 15-year-old boy who had been taken from her. She did not know if he was alive or dead. She might need the morning came too quickly. Captain Wu stood at the edge of the city, looking at the Valori command outpost in the distance. It was a massive structure, built on the ruins of what had once been a beautiful park. The aliens had torn down the trees and the flowers and the playgrounds. In their place, they had erected a tower of golden metal that reached toward the sky like a finger pointing at the heavens. Around the tower, Valori soldiers patrolled in perfect formation. Their silver crowns caught the morning light. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They moved like one creature with many bodies. Wu had been a captain in the Korean Special Forces before the invasion. He had fought in places most people did not know existed. He had killed enemies and watched friends die. He thought he understood war, but this was different. Everyone in position? He asked through the small radio hidden in his collar. Team Alpha ready. That was June, leading the assault group. Team Beta ready. That was Day, leading the scouts. Team Gamma ready. That was Sue, leading the support group. Pulse is ready. That was Hannah. Hidden in a building 3 blocks from the tower, Wu took a deep breath. Remember the plan. We wait for the pulse. The moment the crowns go down, we have 17 seconds. 17 seconds to breach the perimeter. 17 seconds to reach the tower. 17 seconds to change everything. He heard confirmations from all teams. Hannah, he said, it is your moment. Light them up. In her hiding spot, Hana held the pulse device close to her chest. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. Months of work had led to this moment. Countless risks. Countless sacrifices. Everything depended on what happened in the next few seconds. She thought about her brother one more time. Then she pressed the button. The pulse made no sound. There was no flash of light. No explosion. Nothing visible at all. But the effect was immediate and devastating. Every Valori soldier within 2 kilometers froze. Their crowns flickered and went dark. The network that connected their minds suddenly disappeared. For the first time since they had landed on Earth, they were alone in their heads, isolated, confused, lost. And the humans. Attack. Jun led the charge through the front gate. His team moved like water, flowing around obstacles and over barriers. They had trained for this exact moment. They knew the layout of the outpost from memory. They knew where the guards would be standing. They knew where the weak points were. The first Valori soldier they encountered was still standing frozen, his hands raised to his head as if trying to understand what had happened to his crown. June shot him with a stolen Valori weapon. The energy blast hit the alien in the chest and sent him flying backward. Blue blood splattered across the golden walls. The alien did not get up. Gods can bleed. Jun shouted. Keep moving. His team pushed forward. They encountered more soldiers. Some had begun to recover from the initial shock. They raised their weapons with shaking hands. But their movements were slow and uncoordinated. Without the network, they were like newborn children trying to walk for the first time. The humans cut them down without mercy. Day's team came from the side. They had climbed over the walls while the Valori were distracted. They moved through the shadows, taking out guards with silent efficiency. Knives and garrots. No sound, no warning, just death. One Valori officer saw them coming. He opened his mouth to shout a warning. But before any sound could escape, Day was on him. The young scout moved with speed, born from months of practice and years of fear. His knife found the gap between the alien's armor plates. The officer died without making a sound. Eastern corridor clear, they reported through the radio. Moving to the tower. Sue's team provided cover fire from the buildings across the street. They had set up positions in abandoned apartments, their weapons aimed at the outpost. Every time a Valori soldier tried to regroup, a rain of energy blasts forced them back into cover. Keep them pinned, Sue commanded. She was young, but her voice was steady. She had learned that fear was just a feeling. It could not stop her unless she let it dot at the center of the chaos. Wu pushed toward the tower itself. He had the most dangerous job. He had to reach the regional commander before the Valori recovered. He had to show the world that their leaders were not untouchable. The tower's entrance was guarded by 2 elite soldiers. They were bigger than the others. Their armor was thicker. Their weapons were larger. And despite the confusion caused by the pulse, they were still standing firm. Wu did not slow down. He rolled to avoid the first blast of energy. It scorched the ground where he had been standing. He came up firing. His shot hit the first guard in the leg. The alien stumbled but did not fall. The second guard swung his weapon toward Wu. Time seemed to slow down. Wu could see the barrel of the gun. He could see the energy building inside it. He could see his own death approaching. And then Jun was there. He came from nowhere, flying through the air with a battle cry that echoed off the golden walls. He slammed into the second guard with enough force to knock the alien off his feet. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and armor. Go, Jun shouted. I will handle this one. Wu did not hesitate. He ran past the fallen guards and into the tower. Inside, everything was chaos. Valori workers were running in all directions, screaming in their strange language. They had never experienced anything like this. Their perfect world had shattered in an instant. Wu ignored them. They were not his target. He found the stairs and began to climb. His legs burned. His lungs screamed for air. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Every second counted. 14 seconds since the pulse. 3 seconds left. He reached the top floor. The door was closed, but not locked. He kicked it open. The regional commander was waiting for him. The commander was different from the other Valori. He was older. His blue skin was darker, almost purple. His eyes glowed with a deep golden light. He wore robes of shimmering fabric instead of armor. And his crown was larger and more elaborate than any Wu had seen before. And unlike his soldiers, the commander did not seem confused at all. Human, the commander said. His voice was calm, almost amused. You dare to enter my chambers? Wu raised his weapon. Your soldiers are dead. Your outpost is falling. Surrender, and you will live. The commander laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. Surrender? To an insect? You have no idea what you are dealing with. He raised his hand. The crown on his head began to glow. Somehow, it was working again. The pulse had not affected him. Wu felt something grab his mind. Invisible fingers reaching into his thoughts. Pain exploded behind his eyes. He fell to his knees, his weapon clattering to the floor. Did you think your little device would work on me? The commander asked, walking slowly toward Wu. I am not like my soldiers. I have been alive for 10,000 years. I have crushed 1,000 rebellions on 1,000 worlds. I have seen every trick, every weapon, every desperate attempt to resist the inevitable. He stood over Wu, looking down with contempt. You cannot defeat gods, human. You can only kneel before them. Wu struggled to speak. The pain in his head was overwhelming. But through the agony, he managed to smile. Who said I came alone? The commander's eyes widened. He spun around. Hannah stood in the doorway. She held a second device in her hands. Smaller than the first pulse, more focused. I built two, she said. She pressed the button. This pulse was designed specifically for the commander's crown. It hit him like a hammer. The glow in his crown died. The invisible grip on Wu's mind vanished. The commander staggered backward, clutching his head and screaming. Wu grabbed his weapon from the floor. He pointed it at the commander's chest. "Gods do not scream," he said. "Gods do not bleed. And gods do not fall." He pulled the trigger. The commander's body hit the floor. Blue blood spread across the golden tiles. The oldest Valori to ever set foot on Earth was dead. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Hannah's radio crackled to life. It was June. "Outpost is secure. All Valori forces neutralized." Repeat. "All forces neutralized." Hannah felt her legs give out. She slumped against the doorway, breathing hard. They had done it. The impossible mission. The attack that should have killed them all. They had won. Wu stood over the commander's body, his weapon still smoking. His face was blank. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his features. "Someone bring me a camera," he said. The image spread across the planet within hours. Every screen, every device, every hidden radio and smuggled phone. They all showed the same thing. A human soldier standing over the body of a Valori regional commander. A golden tower in flames behind him. A message scrolling across the bottom of the image in every language. They can bleed. They can fall. They are not gods. In work camps and conquered cities and hidden bunkers around the world, humans saw the image. They saw proof that resistance was possible. They saw hope made real, and they began to rise. In Beijing, a group of workers attacked their Valori overseers with tools and bare hands. In New York, a mob stormed a Valori temple and tore down the statues inside. In Moscow, a general who had surrendered on the first day picked up a weapon again and led his soldiers into battle. The Valori responded with fury. They sent more soldiers. They burned cities. They killed thousands, but it did not matter anymore. The spark had become a flame. The flame had Verkay. Tay sat in the pilot's chair and looked at the virus device in his hand. Such a small thing. Such incredible power. "Are you ready?" Hannah's voice. The virus spread like a plague through the Valori network. It started in the command ship, where Tay's sacrifice had delivered it directly into the heart of the enemy. Within seconds, it had infected the main computer systems. Within minutes, it had spread to every connected device. Within an hour, the entire Valori fleet above Earth was in chaos. Ships that had been raining fire down upon human cities suddenly went silent. Their weapons stopped firing. Their engines stuttered and died. Some crashed into the ocean. Others drifted helplessly in orbit. The Golden Fleet that had seemed so unstoppable was now nothing but a collection of lifeless metal. On the ground, Valori soldiers found their crowns burning hot against their heads. Some tore them off in panic. Others collapsed where they stood, their minds overwhelmed by the feedback. Without the network, they could not communicate. They could not coordinate. They could not even think clearly. The humans did not hesitate. Across the planet, resistance forces launched their final offensive. In Seoul, Day led his soldiers through the streets, overwhelming confused Valori troops. In Paris, fighters stormed the last enemy stronghold and tore down the golden banners that had flown there for months. In New York, Wu personally captured the Valori commander and forced him to his knees. City by city, the war ended. 3 days after Tay's sacrifice. The fighting was over. Humanity had won. But the price had been terrible. Billions were dead. Cities were in ruins. Entire regions had been burned to ash. The world that humans had built over thousands of years was almost destroyed. It would take generations to rebuild, and Tay was gone. Hannah stood at the edge of a crater where the factory had once been. A Valori bomb had hit it during the final attack. Everyone inside had been killed. But the resistance had won anyway, because Tay had given them the time they needed. She held a small piece of metal in her hand. It was part of the first pulse device she had built, the one that had started everything. Somehow, it had survived. "You did it," she whispered to no one in particular. Or maybe to everyone. To Tay, to Jun, who had died defending Seoul, to the thousands of unnamed soldiers who had given their lives. "You all did it." Behind her, she heard footsteps. It was Day. He was covered in dirt and blood, but he was alive. "They want you at the council," he said quietly. "What council?" "The one that is deciding what happens next." Yuna is there. Wu. Leaders from every country. They want you there too. Hannah shook her head. "I am not a leader. I am just an engineer." "You built the weapon that saved us all," they said. "That makes you more than an engineer. It makes you a hero." Hannah did not feel like a hero. She felt tired, hollow, broken, but she went anyway. The council was held in what remained of the United Nations building in Geneva. It was one of the few structures still standing. Representatives from every surviving nation had gathered there. Soldiers and scientists and politicians. The people who would shape humanity's future. At the center of the room was a large table. Around it sat the most important people left on Earth. Yuna was there, looking older than her years. Wu stood beside her, his arm in a sling from a wound he had received in the final battle. And at the head of the table was an empty chair. That was supposed to be for Commander Tay, Yuna explained when she saw Hannah looking at it. "We are leaving it empty in his honor." Hannah nodded. She took a seat at the side of the room. "We have a problem," Yuna said, addressing the council. "The Valori fleet is disabled, but not destroyed. There are still thousands of alien soldiers on Earth. Most have surrendered. But there are others in space. Other fleets. Other armies. When they learn what happened here, they will come. Then we destroy the disabled ships," one representative suggested. "We make sure they cannot be repaired." "That will not stop them," Wu said. "The Valori Empire spans 1,000 worlds. We are just one planet. Even without their fleet here, they have enough power to wipe us out 100 times over." The room fell silent. The victory that had seemed so complete suddenly felt fragile. Then Hannah spoke. "There is another way." Everyone turned to look at her. She stood up slowly, gathering her thoughts. "The virus I created did not just disable their technology. It also gave me access to their records, their history, their communications." She paused. "I know things about the Valori that they do not want anyone to know." "What kind of things?" Yuna asked. "The Valori have conquered 1,000 worlds. But they have not just conquered them. They have lied to them. Every species they have enslaved believes the Valori are gods. Immortal, invincible, but they are not. They are just a species with advanced technology, like us. And they are terrified of anyone discovering the truth." Hannah walked to the center of the room. "If we can show the other conquered species what we have done, if we can prove that the Valori can be beaten, their entire empire will collapse. Every slave will rise up. Every world will rebel. The Valori will not be able to fight us and everyone else at the same time." The room erupted in murmurs and discussions. It was a bold plan, a dangerous plan, but it might work. "How do we send this message?" Wu asked. "I can use their own network," Hannah said. "Before the virus destroyed it, I copied the communication protocols. I can broadcast to every world in their empire. I can show them footage of our victory. I can show them that humans forced the Valori to fall." Yuna looked at the other council members. One by one, they nodded. "Do it," Yuna said. 1 week later, the message went out. It traveled at faster than light. speeds through the subspace channels the Valori used to communicate across their empire. It reached 1,000 worlds. It showed billions of enslaved beings what had happened on a small blue planet called Earth. It showed the first strike on Sol. It showed the war that followed. It showed Valori soldiers surrendering, Valori commanders captured, Valori ships burning in the sky, and it ended with a simple message translated into every language in the galaxy. They called themselves gods. We made them kneel. So can you. The effect was immediate. On a world called Vex Prime, a species of four-armed beings who had been enslaved for centuries saw the message. They had believed the Valori were unkillable. They had believed resistance was impossible. But now they saw the truth. And they rose up. On a planet called Nether, a race of underground dwellers who had been forced to mine precious metals for their masters, finally understood that they were not alone. They attacked their overseers with pickaxes and bombs on a moon called Seri, where the Valori kept their largest shipyard. The enslaved workers sabotaged every vessel under construction. Thousands of new warships were destroyed before they could ever fly. Across the empire, the same story repeated. Slaves rebelled. Soldiers mutinied. Governors fled. The Valori tried to respond. They sent their fleets to crush the rebellions. But there were too many. Every time they stopped one uprising, 3 more began. Their empire, which had seemed so powerful, was tearing itself apart. 2 months after the war on Earth ended, the Valori Emperor made a decision. He would go to Earth himself. He would negotiate. The humans had done what no other species had ever done. They had broken the myth of Valori godhood. The Emperor understood that if he did not make peace now, his entire empire would collapse. It was the greatest humiliation in Valori history. The meeting was held in the same council chamber in Geneva. But this time, there was a new addition. At one end of the room, sitting on a makeshift throne, was the Valori Emperor himself. He was ancient. His skin was so dark blue it was almost black. His eyes glowed with a light that had burned for 10,000 years. He wore robes of pure gold and a crown so elaborate it seemed to weigh as much as a mountain. And yet, when he looked at the humans before him, there was something in his eyes that had never been there before. Fear. Hannah stood at the front of the human delegation. She had been chosen to speak for Earth, the engineer who had turned the tide of the war. You have asked for peace, she said. Explain what that means. The Emperor's voice was deep and resonant. Even now, it carried the authority of millennia. I offer a treaty. The Valori will withdraw from Earth. We will recognize your species as independent. We will not return. That is not enough, Hannah said. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. What more do you want? You will free every species you have enslaved. You will withdraw from every world you have conquered. You will dismantle your empire and return to your home world. You will never again claim to be gods. The room was absolutely silent. The Emperor stared at Hannah for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You asked for everything. You took everything from us, Hannah replied, and from 1,000 other worlds. This is justice, and if I refuse, Hannah smiled. It was the same dangerous smile she had worn when she built the first pulse. Then we will send more messages. We will encourage more rebellions. We will watch your empire burn until there is nothing left. And then we will come for you ourselves. The Emperor looked around the room at the humans who had defeated his forces. He saw Yuna, the strategist who had coordinated a global war. He saw Wu, the warrior who had killed his regional commander. He saw Day, the scout who had moved through Valori defenses like a ghost. And he saw Hannah, the engineer, the weapon maker, the human who had broken the myth of Valori divinity for tea. 6 months had passed since the first strike. 6 months of blood and fire and death. 6 months of a war that the Valori had never expected to fight. General Yuna stood in a bunker deep, beneath the mountains of Korea. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Before the invasion, she had been a professor of military history at a university. She had spent her life studying wars from the safety of books and classrooms. Now, she was fighting one. The bunker was filled with screens and maps and communication equipment. Officers ran back and forth, carrying reports and relaying orders. This was the heart of the human resistance, the command center for a global war against an empire that spanned the stars. "Report from the European front," an officer said, handing Yuna a tablet. "The Paris offensive was successful. French and German forces have recaptured the city center. Valori casualties are estimated at 3,000. Yuna nodded. "And our losses?" The officer hesitated. 8,000. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment. 8,000 lives. Mothers and fathers and children who would never come home. The cost of victory was always measured in blood. "Continue the offensive," she said. "We cannot give them time to regroup." The war had changed everything. In the beginning, the resistance had been scattered. Small groups fighting alone, disconnected, weak. The Valori had crushed them one by one. They had burned cities and slaughtered millions. They had made examples of anyone who dared to resist. But Yuna had changed that. She had taken the chaos and given it order. She had connected the scattered groups through a network of hidden radios and secret messengers. She had created a unified command structure. She had turned a collection of rebels into an army, and Hannah had given that army weapons. The engineer had not rested since the first strike. She had taken apart every piece of Valori technology she could find. She had learned their secrets. She had built new versions of the Pulse, each one more powerful than the last. She had created shields that could block their energy weapons. She had designed vehicles that could move without being detected. Most importantly, she had discovered how to hack their network. The Valori relied on their neural crowns for everything. Communication, coordination, information. Without the crowns, they were lost. But with Hana's hacking technology, humans could do more than just disrupt the crowns. They could read the messages. They could see the enemy's plans. They could strike where the Valori least expected. The war had turned from a desperate struggle into something else entirely. It had turned into a hunt. In Asia, Tay led the Eastern campaign. He had grown from a commander into a legend. The Valori called him the Ghost. He appeared where they did not expect him. He vanished before they could respond. He had liberated Korea and Japan and most of Southeast Asia. His face was on posters in every city. His name was whispered by children who dreamed of fighting like him. In the Americas, Wu led the Western campaign. He had recovered from the mental attack in the tower and come back stronger than ever. He had gathered an army of fighters from the United States and Canada and Mexico. They had pushed the Valori back mile by mile, city by city. The aliens who had once walked through American streets like gods now hid in fortified bases, afraid to venture out. In Europe and Africa, local commanders led their own campaigns. Every day, more territory was reclaimed. Every day, more Valori soldiers fell. Every day, the empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds found itself losing to a species it had dismissed as primitive. But the Valori were not finished yet. Yuna stared at the latest report with a frown. The numbers did not make sense. "They are pulling back," she said to her officers. "All fronts. They are withdrawing their forces to their main bases." "Is that not good news?" one officer asked. "No," Yuna replied. "It is not." She pointed at the map. "Look at the pattern. They are not retreating in confusion. They are retreating in order. They are consolidating their forces. They are preparing for something. The room fell silent. What are they preparing for? Another officer asked. Yuna did not answer. But she had a terrible feeling in her gut. The answer came 3 days later. The Valori ships, which had floated silently above Earth cities for months, suddenly came alive. Their engines roared with power. Their weapons began to glow with deadly light, and then they started to descend. All units report. Yuna shouted into her radio. What is happening? Reports flooded in from around the world. The Valori ships were moving toward the surface. Thousands of them. Millions of soldiers were being deployed. This was not a defensive action. This was a full-scale invasion. Again. But this time was different. This time, the Valori were not coming to conquer. They were coming to destroy. They are targeting population centers, an officer said, his voice shaking. They are firing on civilians. Cities are burning. Yuna felt cold. She understood now. The Valori had given up on ruling humanity. If they could not have Earth, they would make sure no one could. Get me Commander Tay, she ordered. Get me Captain Wu. Get me every commander we have. We need to respond now. The final battle for Earth had begun. Hana was in her laboratory when the attack started. She felt the ground shake as explosions rocked the surface above. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lights flickered. What is happening? She asked, rushing to a communication terminal. The answer made her blood run cold. They are destroying everything, Day's voice came through the radio. He was in Seoul, helping to coordinate the defense. The ships are firing on everything. Buildings, roads, people. They do not care anymore. They just want us dead. Hannah closed her eyes. She had known this might happen. She had hoped it would not. But she had prepared for it anyway. Day, she said, I need you to listen to me carefully. There is a weapon. A final weapon. I built it months ago, but I hope we would never have to use it. What kind of weapon? A virus. A computer virus. It can spread through the Valori network and destroy it completely. Every crown, every ship, every piece of technology they have. It will all fail at once. There was a pause. That sounds like exactly what we need. There is a problem, Hana continued. The virus needs to be uploaded directly into their main command ship, the one in orbit above the planet. Someone has to get up there and plan it manually. Another pause. Longer this time. A suicide mission, they said. Yes, Hannah admitted. Almost certainly. Then I will do it. Hannah shook her head, even though Day could not see her. No, you are needed here. The defense of Seoul depends on you. Then who? Before Hannah could answer, another voice came through the radio. I will do it. It was Tae, the ghost of the East. The legend. The commander who had never lost a battle. Commander, no, Hana said. You are too important. The resistance needs you. The resistance needs victory, Tae replied. His voice was calm, peaceful, like he had already made his decision long ago. Without this virus, we will all die. Every human on Earth. Every man, woman, and child. I will not let that happen. But, Hannah, Tae interrupted gently. You gave us hope when we had none. You built weapons when we had nothing. You turned a group of refugees into an army. This war was won by you. Not by me. Not by anyone else. By you. Hannah felt tears streaming down her face. That is not true. It is true, Tae said. And now it is my turn to do my part. Send me the virus. Tell me what ship to steal. And let me finish what we started. Yuna heard the conversation from her command bunker. She wanted to argue. She wanted to order Tae to stand down. But she knew it would be useless. She had known Tae for 20 years. Once he made a decision, nothing could change his mind. Instead, she opened a channel to all resistance forces. All units, this is General Yuna. We are entering the final phase of the war. Commander Tay is undertaking a mission that will end the Valori threat forever. But he needs time. We must hold the line. We must protect our people. We must give him the chance to save us all. She paused, gathering her strength. I will not lie to you. Many of us will not survive this day. But our sacrifice will mean something. It will mean freedom. It will mean the future. It will mean that our children and their children will never bow to false gods. She raised her fist, even though no one could see her. Fight. Fight for humanity. Fight for Earth. Fight for everything we have lost and everything we will build. Across the planet, her words echoed through radios and speakers. And humans responded. In Seoul, Day led a charge against advancing Valori troops. His team was outnumbered 10-1, but they did not retreat. They fought with everything they had. Guns and knives and bare hands. They made the Valori pay for every step. In Paris, survivors of the earlier offensive regrouped and launched a counterattack. They stormed Valori positions with grenades and improvised explosives. They turned the streets into a trap from which the aliens could not escape. In New York, Wu led his forces in a desperate defense of Manhattan. The Valori ships rained fire down upon the city, but the humans would not break. They sheltered in subway tunnels and underground bunkers. They emerged to strike and then vanished again. And in a hidden airfield outside of Seoul, Tay boarded a captured Valori shuttle. The shuttle was small. Barely enough room for one person and a pilot's chair. Hana had modified it over the past months, adding human controls and disabling the tracking systems. It was the only vehicle they had that could reach orbit.